It's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, George Lester from the University of Melbourne. He's going to speak to us about one of the current problems in relation to climate change and the effect on stainless bees. So it's my great pleasure now, and he's the winner of our revered past Vice President, Dr. Clive Williams, the award, and George is the winner of our 2014 award, and we're looking forward now to hearing George tell us all about it. Thank you, George. Over to you.
Thanks very much for the introduction. So yeah, here's me in the research team, and like you said, I'm from the University of Melbourne out of the Mayfield lab, and I'm studying native bees. But before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the lands of where I'm talking from, the lands of the Wiradjuri people, and in the theme of Wildlife Week, the translation of Wurundjeri actually translates to both the manigum tree and the witchetty grub, and the Wiradjuri people are known as the witchetty grub people. So that's just a fun fact about that. And I'd also like to acknowledge the lands of where my research take place, the lands of the Yolngu First Nation. And I can draw parallels between both of these First Nation groups because they both use bioindicators to signify the calendar seasons. Like in Melbourne, we see that we're in the season of Porneet, which is signified by the flowering of murnongs and dianellas. And similar in the season of Woolloomooroo in Arnhem Land is signified by the finishing of the flowering of goodacres or stringy barks, as well as the opening of seed pods of the Woolloomooroos. And so here's my research in a nutshell. Firstly, the Yolngu First Nation have been noticing recently some concerning declines in the honey harvest of native stingless bees. So they've asked us to go up to northeast Arnhem Land and look at native bees, and how we've been doing that is analysing the pollen on each of the native bees to see what flowers that they're visiting. And then we're also looking at the flowering times of these key feed plants, which have also been reported to be shifting the flowering phenology of the flowering plants in the area. So that's the summary, and here's where the research has taken place, right up in the top of northeast Arnhem Land in remote Northern Territory in the Eucalyptus tetradonta stringy bark woodlands. And this is a really remnant, remote part of the world. And to put into context just how remote it is, the area of northeast Arnhem Land is about the equivalent of the country of Belgium. And prior to our research taking place, there was less than 50 native bee or any bee records in the whole region. So there's really no baseline data whatsoever to go off. And so what we've been doing up there is we've been doing lots of plant surveys and looking at the different flowering plants in the regions, and we've been sequencing the DNA of these plant species to make these unique barcodes, which are like sort of indicators of each of the different species like barcodes are. And so this comes in handy then when we collect the bees and are looking at native bee pollen diets. We can sort of scan the DNA of the pollen that the bees are carrying, and that'll give us an indication of the different flowering plants that the native bees are collecting pollen from. And we're building these networks which connect all of the native bee species in the area that we've collected and see what different flowering plant species that the bees are relying on and using as feed plants and their key resources, and sort of identify the ones which in particular are really, really depended on by the native bees in the area. And this comes in handy because then we can look at the different important key resources to these native bees, and we can sort of assess whether the flowering times of the flowering plants of the key resources is something that's impacting the native bees. And we've identified a few trends, like the top left corner is the stringy bark or the goodacre, and this seems to be flowering later and later in the season as the years go on, whereas there's other species which seem to be flowering earlier. And you can understand how these all being out of whack can be having impacts on native bees in the area. And what we're doing with this information is we're relaying this back to our research partners with the Yolngu First Nation, and this can help to inform their management strategies in the future, as well as engaging in a longer term monitoring project so that we can get a better idea of what's going on with the honey declines in the stingless bees through all of this research. And yeah, it's been a really awesome opportunity to work with the Yolngu people on this, and I'm really grateful. And yeah, I'd like to also thank the Wildlife Society for the funds. So thank you.